Hey Jack, welcome back to part 5 of my response to your message to me. I'm going to read this next bit and then we'll talk through it. You said in this part, I see there being 3 roles, core components to marriage: lover and friends, roommates, co-parents. But it falls apart for me if the lover part is not there. I don't need a roommate. I will be an awesome single dad. Amy would be an awesome single mom. I want to do RMM and work on myself no matter what, but I am not seeing a love life with Amy. Perhaps mostly because I do not think she does. She gives me table scraps of attention, rebuffs my attempts to be affectionate. Her heart is closed and I do not know how to open it. Just like the last time, man, I've lived this story. I've walked with a lot of men living that story and I get it. Women want to be opened, but it's hard, right? It's hard for them sometimes to be open. They've got a lot of stuff they've got to sort through, but we also have to become that guy. And you've heard me maybe mention a couple of metaphors, but I'll mention them again here because they're worth repeating. And it stuck out to me when I bought land, when I bought 25 acres here in Pennsylvania. And I thought I was going to have an Instagram-ready life. I was going to just have beautiful pictures of the lush, vibrant gardens and orchard and animals and everything. And I put tens of thousands of dollars into homesteading and started to waste tens of thousands of dollars because I just thought, hey, my name's on the deed and I'm trying, and so I should have a bountiful harvest, right? What I didn't understand is I needed to go from no knowledge of homesteading, which meant things like orcharding, raising animals, gardening, creating your own energy, all kinds of stuff. I didn't know any of that stuff, none. And yet I had somehow foolishly believed that because I wanted to and because I owned the property that it should be fruitful. Then reality sunk in and I realized, you know what? I don't know what I'm doing. And that's my problem. I have the resources, I own the land, and I have the desire and will to do the work, but power alone will not produce a harvest. You have to have skill. You have to become the person who has learned how to cultivate. The same thing is true in marriage. And if it hadn't been for buying this homestead, my marriage probably would be in the gutter because it became the place where I learned that truth about marriage. Because I lived life like this everywhere. Just buy it and throw money at it and it should produce fruitfulness. But I wasn't learning kind of the law of sowing and reaping. There's no shortcuts to mastery. And I hadn't also learned yet that the kind of relationship I wanted from a female was found in mastery, not in just, I want this, right? And so the kind of homestead I want, mastery. The kind of business I want, mastery. The kind of relationship with a woman I want, mastery. And here's the brutal truth, man. I'm not a master in any of those. Am I becoming that? Yes. But I had wanted the fruit of mastery, the fruit of experience, the fruit of trial and effort, the fruit of adversity and challenge and failure, all without experiencing that stuff. And when I started to realize, man, marriage doesn't work like that. Your marriage doesn't start off like in mastery. It might feel like it a little bit, which is enough to get any of us in a long-term relationship, get a couple kids popped out, and then realize, oh, this is hard. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of humble pie eating. It takes a lot of self-examination. It takes a lot of humility. It takes a lot of character development and building. If you want mastery, you could just go, have a shallow relationship and nobody would fault you for that. Just like I could go and buy a tomato at the supermarket, but it's not going to have the same satisfaction to me as a tomato I grew by having to learn a lot about how to grow a delicious tomato. And so that's going on here, and that's what I want you to understand, right? You become the person who can have the relationship you want by going through this stuff, okay? one more metaphor. If we got on a helicopter right now and we went to the top of Everest and we got out, we would die. And the reason we would die is because we're not acclimated to the summit of Everest. Because you become acclimated to stand on the summit of Everest by doing the climbing of Everest. And again, same thing is true in marriage. A man and a woman start out believing or with this lofty goal of what it will be like. And I would suggest what they're seeing is the summit experience. But what they don't understand, what we don't understand is, man, we have to do a lot of climbing to become the person who can stand at that summit. We have to become the person who can, grow the produce to have that. And we get so confused that we think we can bypass all that stuff and just start demanding it on day one. I could just demand that my marriage go a certain way, that I could skip the work of mastery. And so I want you just to settle into this idea. You can have the life you want. You can have the lover part, right? But it's not going to come to you just because you signed up for this thing called marriage. You stood in front of an altar or a justice of the peace and said, I do. That's not enough. A lot of men want it to be enough, and in a day and age in the past when the court system made it very hard for a woman to leave a relationship, that was enough for a lot of guys to basically get a lifetime committed female. But it's actually to our benefit that went away, because now you actually have to be a master if you want to have a relationship that is equivalent or a byproduct of that mastery. And you have to become your best you to do that. It's not about her becoming her best her. It's about you becoming your best you. And so it's clear to me in this section that you wrote that there's a giveaway in here about your belief system. You basically said it like this: I don't have a life because I don't think she wants one. You said it. You said, I don't have a love life because I don't think she wants one. That means there too, like, you see her as responsible to create the love and romance you want. Not you. You see her, right? That is not working for you. And you say, she gives me table scraps of attention. I know this feeling really well. I lived in that for a long time. In fact, if you've ever heard the U2 song, I think it's Scraps from Your Table, I was like my anthem for a long time. I had all these playlists of these melancholy songs that were basically just needy, codependent songs about how my life is so horrible because this person doesn't love me enough. And what I didn't realize there, and you'll realize if you go through the RMM course, is I'm just feeling my own lack. I'm feeling my own lack of appreciation, attention, validation, etc. And when I don't approve me, when I judge me as coming up short, and I look to somebody else to make me feel good, and I experience that neediness, I'm just experiencing insecurity, by the way, then what I'm really asking a woman to do is, would you please address my insecure sense of self? And that's not romantic. That's not love. But a lot of men don't know that. And so they confuse that with love. But what they're really looking for is emotional healing. They're looking for a sense of wholeness. And that does not come from a woman. It comes from renewal of your insides to where you understand, I am already whole. I don't need the attention of a woman to be whole. I don't need the attention, adoration, affection, touch, acceptance, etc. of a woman or any human being to have an assurance that I have value, worth, and significance. If those things come from a woman or a human being, they're taken away by her too. Just like they can be taken away by your parents, your boss, your neighbor. Anybody you give the power to make you feel good has the power to make you not feel good. And I would suggest this does not work for human beings, right? And so my own life greatly transformed when I started identifying, you know what? I'm living in a story where my wife's not giving me attention and affection and all that. There's something else going on here. What if I just have a need for those things? And I'm unfairly believing that it's her role and duty, and I have an expectation that she's to give them to me. A lot of people believe that's normal relationships, that we're just supposed to be walking around mutually meeting each other's needs all the time. That's a bankrupt system. And again, I've never seen a couple long-term happy, sense of fullness, deep connection and intimacy who can do that by meeting each other's needs all the time without having to have these kind of relational, determine the relationship conversations where they air all their grievances of how you're not meeting my needs and then try to work out their mutual hurt. That's what we did for, 2 decades. It didn't work. And so it was not until I learned that I have to be self-reliant, that all these things I want, all these things that you want, we have to own them thoroughly. And when we do, which we can do, it changes everything. Again, like I mentioned in an earlier video, it takes your dependency away from your partner, which takes judgment away from your partner. And in the absence of judgment, there's acceptance now for your partner. They can move towards you. They don't feel the covert contracts you're creating with them to try to get your sense of self provided. And it just heals not just yourself, but the relationship. And so that's what really needs to happen. All right. So lastly, living in this kind of energy where, like she doesn't give me what I need, it creates the reality that you're living in. She rebuffs my attempts to be affectionate. It's because your attempts to be affectionate are covert contracts to try to get needs met. Most of the time, meaning you don't realize this, Jack, but when you're living in this system where it's like your brain says, well, maybe if I do this, she'll do that. I can feel good, right? That's not affection. That's not appreciation for somebody for the sake of who you're appreciating. It's not a gift. It's not really true non-transactional love. It's a backhanded way, a dishonest way to try to get a need met. It's manipulation. And a woman rebuffs manipulation instinctively because she knows better. And I'm so glad they do. Because if they played that game, and they'll play it for a little while, there's no life there. There's no happiness. And you and I, we would be woefully childish, immature, and dependent, and basically stuck in all of life where we don't get to do anything until we get the approval of other people. That addiction to how other people feel about us is crippling you as a man. It cripples man. And so when you let that go, and when you actually take the shift from this immaturity and dependency to maturity and self-reliance and ownership and agency, you will feel great. I promise you. That's how men feel. Like, it is what you want, actually, and it's where what you want exists, including the kind of relationship you have. And so we'll talk in the last part about why you might want to consider not, blowing your family up until you're living that way, because I think, well, we'll talk about that when we get to it. So let's wrap that up, put a pin in it for now, and we'll have some final thoughts in the next part or two. So I'll see you then.